Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us. As promised on the program today, talking about the really popular book out there now called Get Rid of the Performance Review, How Companies Can Stop Intimidating, Start Managing, and Focus on What Really Matters. Our guest on the program is the author, Professor Samuel Colbert, as I mentioned, Professor of Management at UCLA Anderson School of Management. Professor, first of all, welcome to This Week in America. Great to have you with us.
Thanks. I'm looking forward.
Well, this is going to be a great discussion because you're saying something and writing something that so many of us have mumbled over the years, and you make the very strong argument that not only are the standard performance reviews that we all seem to have to tolerate ineffective, but they're damaging as well to both the employee as well as to management. These really, in your view, set things back a ways.
Well, it's just one little basic fault. They're fraudulent. They don't pretend to do what they are supposed to be doing. They don't do the company one iota of good.
Well, that's interesting. What is in your mind, what is the reason to do a performance review? What should happen at a performance review? What should be the outcome?
I don't think you should do a performance review. I think you should do previews. I think you should talk about what's happening in process and teaming up with the boss and employee, teaming up with one another. I think what you need in organizations to be effective are candid conversations where there's not a gun to the employee's head and the boss is in a situation to learn, not just pontificate.
Well, and there's so many times, and I hear people say when they're talking about, and I'm mentioning the book coming up, and it's like, yeah, performance reviews generally start with the words, let's get this out of the way. It's something that they feel has to be done. Nobody's real excited about it. And you make the case in talking about performance reviews that review of performance is good, but it should be done on an ongoing basis and not necessarily an arbitrary date once or twice a year.
Look, once you have a performance review, you've got a situation where the boss is banking deficiencies as he or she would allege about the employee and giving the employee a year's length or 6 months time to dig himself a bigger hole or herself a bigger hole. No, it's just a non-constructive, trust-breaking exercise. Look, what you want in a company or in any organization is you want people teaming up with one another. And the team that should really work most effectively together are the boss and his or her direct reports. With a performance review, is a trust breaker. It's a systematic procedure that's guaranteed to break down that relationship and to create the need for fraud.
You're listing.
Performance reviews allow bad managers to be bad managers. They prevent good managers from being good, and they just create the conditions for inauthenticity.
You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You can get information on Professor. You get information on the book as well. Go directly to their website, which is performancepreview.com. There are all sorts of stories you can get there. You can get involved. You can order the book there as well. The book is Get Rid of the Performance Review. Professor Samuel Colbert, our guest on This Week in America. And you're talking about performance previews, and I want to go through some of the things that commonly happen in the performance review and then contrast that with what you say should happen. Many people will say the focus when you sit in a performance review is finding fault. It's placing blame, and you're saying it should be just the opposite. The whole idea should be achieving results in the future.
Absolutely. Previews allow bosses to learn about a subordinate or the operative, to get that person. Everybody comes to work with deficiencies, things they're supposed to be able to do that they can't do, and that's not what should be emphasized. What should be emphasized is how does this imperfect human being get results? What does she or he need in order to be effective? What's the boss's job? The boss's job is should not be to play upon employees' faults and ask an employee who has maybe gone 40 or 50 years with the same imperfection to, because the boss notices something, to change and to reconfigure him or herself. What ought to be happening is the boss should be exercising his or her responsibility, which is not to play on people's faults, but to make each and every operative maximally effective. Boss's job is to help people succeed, not to ding them for deficiencies.
Well, you talk in the book, Get Rid of the Performance Review, the fact that we're all broken. And you use the analogy that if I'm playing baseball and they want me to hit home runs, I can't hit home runs, but I can hit a whole lot of singles. And you talk about a compensatory routine that people go through. So you're basically saying that everybody should be able to bring a particular skill. It's the job of management to find out what that skill is and bring it out in them.
Right. And we could be talking about spouses. We could be talking about kids. We could be talking about all the people you love and you're pulling for to be effective. What does it take to be a good parent or a good partner? What it requires, or a good teammate as a boss, it requires learning about an individual, comprehending where that person needs assistance, and filling it in, not grousing about you're not being able to get what you want to get, so that you can indulge your own personality. No, performance previews, not reviews. Previews emphasize getting somebody straight and engaging in the conversations.
Samuel Colbert is our guest. Yes, sir. Samuel Colbert is our guest. The book is called Get Rid of the Performance Review. He's saying replace them with performance previews. And one of the things that when you go in and you sit and you go through the evaluation, you're being compared to everybody else. It's like how you fit in with this whole group of people we have here. And you're saying, boy, that's wrong. Everybody should be treated as individuals.
Everybody is an individual. And once you start comparing people, putting people in a common category, you create the conditions for those people to get competitive and divisive with one another. It is you don't put people in categories. You never assume that everybody in some group should be the same or should have the same strength. When you start making those assumptions, all we're doing is looking for deficiencies. We're not looking to comprehend the uniqueness and the unique and special cleverness of each individual.
You talk in the book about when you're brought in to look at different companies and to fix different companies. They'll say, we need you to fix the problem. And in many cases, it's trying to get the employee on board. We can't get them on board. And you say simply to them, you really don't need to get them on board. There are other ways to maximize what you're doing in the business. Explain how that works.
Well, we're not talking about getting somebody to fill your expectations. We're talking about getting people together and figuring out how to best deploy them. I believe that a boss should be evaluated on the basis of whether he or she helps the subordinate or the employee to succeed, whether that employee is able to find a way of being deployed effectively, not to please the boss, but to get results for the company. What I want are bosses with their skin in the game. I want bosses to be evaluated on the employee's capacity and ability to get the results. Once you start doing that, you cause people to talk to one another.
Get Rid of the Performance Review is the name of the new book by Professor Samuel Colbert from UCLA, Professor of Management at UCLA Anderson School of Management. Get rid of the Performance Review and replace it, he says, with the Performance Preview. And that's what we're talking about on This Week in America. His website, performancepreview.com. Ours is thisweekinamerica.us. Get information there as well. Let's talk about the role of HR. And you're critical of HR in saying basically this is sort of a power grab on their point. point, they should find a different way to get power, that this really is damaging the company by having this firm grasp on the performance reviews.
Well, Rick, when you started out, you said everybody says, let's get it over with. Guess who knows how much people don't want to do them? HR knows that managers drag their feet, so they're constantly bugging the managers to do it. They know about what employees hear during these performance reviews, often by people who should not be speaking for the company. They're just self-interested people talking about themselves and their own wish list. And so they know about all the aggravations. They know about how much time it gets to, and what a distraction it is from the employee's day, from the manager's day. They know all the problems created by performance reviews, and yet they station themselves as a unit. They're not bad people. They're nice people. A lot of people go into HR because they think they want to be good for other human beings. But what they do in ignoring all the awfulness created by performance reviews, they become the force, and it's a self-interested force, of making sure that performance reviews take place. And what they have to say to justify it is a pack of lies. What the book does, it goes one by one, deconstructing every justification for the performance review, and shows the fraudulent logic and misassumptions being made.
And I'm sure people are listening to the program going, yes. And again, on both sides, the people that actually give the reviews, the people that are on the receiving end of the reviews. We've got a few minutes left in the program. If somebody is out there listening going, that's right, and what can I do about it? What can an employee do about changing the way the performance reviews are handled, and try to move towards the performance previews that you're talking about?
Well, as I mentioned just a moment ago, our book deconstructs, takes apart every justification for a performance review. And I think that only an employee is stuck, particularly in this economic situation. But what you can do is ask the people who are conducting the performance reviews, what is your logic for why this is going to be a constructive, positive exercise for me or for the company? And I think that the book will equip anybody to say that's baloney. That doesn't make sense. Let me give you the counter logic. Now, that's all a person can do. What you need in a company is some group of intellectual leaders, somebody who will put it on the line and say, let's get rid of these things. Let's start doing what common sense dictates. It could be the CEO, except in a lot of companies, that's not the CEO's job. The CEO's job is to go talk to Wall Street and get the price of the stock up. Could be a COO. Could be, oh my goodness, could be a human resource.
There we go. We found something for them to do where they can be productive. That's good. We've got about 2 minutes left in the program. I know a point you make in the book, and maybe this is one of the underlying reasons that it is such a problem, is that managers in most cases have never been taught to be good managers. They're usually elevated, thrown into a management capacity. Is that one of the reasons we haven't seen changes?
For sure. And I'm in the business of teaching managers to be good managers. But the misassumptions made about human nature are just incredible. They're so gross. And we point them out in the book about how you have to think about people in order to go forward with this idiotic process. So getting good grades at work shouldn't be based on how much your boss likes you. It's doing a good job shouldn't be about how well I'm able to suck up to the boss. Having a conversation shouldn't be about trying to tell the boss what I think he or she wants me to say, in contrast to telling the boss what I think needs to get done for the company to be successful.
Good point you make, and we've got about 30 seconds left, is during the review, if in fact you're having one, or just an opportunity where the boss, the management is talking to an employee, and you mentioned conversation, sometimes it's good on their part, management, to shut up and listen, and maybe they'll learn something from the employee.
It's even more than shut up and listen. It is create the conditions where the employee has nothing to fear. So the employee can tell you candidly how he or she sees it, if only to give you the opportunity, Mr. Manager, to set the guy straight. And maybe in the process, that employee who is more expert about certain operations, who has the experience and insight from talking to other people, will have an opportunity to express it, and in the process make the whole organization operate more effectively.
It is an excellent book. Get rid of the performance review, says our guest, Professor Samuel Colbert. He says replace it with a performance preview. The book is doing great all across the country, being grabbed by both management people as well as by employees, and maybe we're going to see a very significant change in the workplace because of it. Professor, thank you so much. An excellent book. Thank you for joining us on This Week in America. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for the excellent conversation, Rick.
Thank you. We'll be right back This Week in America after these messages.